My good friend Mike Frazer and I visited just a couple of weeks ago and enjoyed a very small part of Big Cypress National Preserve. We're going to share that with you today. Here we are walking in through a very warm pool of water on the off-road trail leading into the forest. So one of the first things that we saw when we stepped off the off-road trail and into the Cypress Dome was this big snapping turtle just floating in the water.
I found a friend.
He is big. He didn't mind me walking by him at all, and once I passed him, he started swimming off and passed Mike and went about the rest of his day.
Hey guys, I'm out in Big Cypress National Preserve today, and I'm standing in the middle of a cypress swamp. Right now, it's the middle of June, end of June. The water at my feet is about shin deep, almost knee deep in some areas. By the middle to the end of summer, the water here is going to be close to waist deep. So we talk about the things that plants and animals need in order to survive. Number one, obviously, is water. Plants and animals all need water in order to survive. There's plenty of that here. Plants and animals also need air. The air out here is so fresh, it's so clean, it's so peaceful and quiet. You can just hear the bugs in the background. There's some big bullfrogs back in the distance. It's so cool. But what I want to talk about is how this kind of plant right here, this is a Bromeliad or an air plant, gets what it needs. Now, this cypress tree right here clearly gets its water from the root system down in the ground. Even here, we see some smaller air plants on the side of this tree. And you'll see these around your schools and around your homes. So the question is, how does this plant, which is not a part of the cypress tree, I could take this off, I'm not going to. I could take this off and hold it in my hand and I would have the whole entire plant. How does this plant get the water that it needs if it doesn't have roots that go down into the ground? That's an interesting question. You may want to pause here and do some research or maybe talk about how you think these air plants get the water that they need. I'll give you a minute to do that. Now that you're back, I will tell you that these plants can absorb the water they need directly from the air. The humidity, that water, that stickiness in the air that you feel on a hot day like today. These plants are able to suck that water directly out of the air, get it right through their leaf system, right? And there's some roots that give it support that hold it on to the side of the tree. This is called a symbiotic relationship. You don't need to know that. You'll learn more about that in middle school. The tree gives this air plant the support that it needs, but the plant gets the water that it needs directly from the air. You'll see that with Spanish mosses, lichens, these lichens that are growing on the side of the plant down here. There's many examples. Here's a flower for this Bromeliad right here. Ooh. Hear that bullfrog? Big old bullfrog in the background there. So cool. This flower right here, looks like this one is about ready to die, this flower. We'll see if there aren't some better flowers out in the swamp. I just wanted to share that with you, how these air plants, these bromeliads, get the water they need directly from the atmosphere and not through a root system like most other plants. What is the soil made up of out here? And on the top layer, you can see all the dead needles from last season. And the deeper down I got in that handful, you'll see they're broken up really small. There's not a lot of silt, clay, even sand. This is mostly broken plant matter. And some of it gets reused. Some of it gets broken down finer and finer, but you don't have a lot of depth here.
We'll cut.
Little protein there. So this is really cool. I've never seen this before. This is a mushroom that clearly was growing on the side of this plant. And when the water level rose, this mushroom, this fungus is now, I don't know what it's doing. It looks like it's feathering out, growing out. That's really neat. I've never seen that. I'm going to have to ask some friends about that and see if they can tell me what's going on with that. Pretty cool. So I'm in among these alligator flag right now, and I noticed as soon as I walked back in here, very definite change from over there where the ground was a little firmer to right here where I can actually feel myself sinking in mud. Not much, just a little bit, but it's definitely muddier and muckier right here where these alligator flag are growing. And the reason that they're called alligator flag is that it's said that when an alligator passes through, it's going to move it. So if you see the flag waving, that's a sign that there's an alligator back in there. I'm not too worried about alligators, but you know what? This is far enough for me. So I'm going to stop here and not go too much deeper into the alligator flag and get back out here into these cypress. Following me with his eyes, that's for sure. Following me with his eyes, that's for sure. So in along this trail that we're walking on, there's a lot of this limestone rock just under the surface of the water. And if you look over here, here's a hole completely through the piece of limestone. Later in the dry season, when the water starts to go down, there's going to be little pockets of water left on the top of the limestone rock. And when it rains, there's water that's left on the top there. Right now, it's completely submerged. This water, which is slightly acidic, and we know that it's slightly acidic because we can see kind of the brown, almost tea coloration of the water. Those are tannins. That slight acid in this limestone rock will actually slowly dissolve this rock over time. And that's what, oh, did you see there's a little critter that just popped up through? Oh, and a bigger critter. How cool is that? So those holes were formed by the slightly acidic water slowly dissolving through that limestone. Given enough time, given enough space, those tiny little holes can become caverns. They can actually, if they're big enough and far enough underground, if they fall in, they become what we call sinkholes. And those can sometimes be dangerous, but mostly they form most of the lakes in the state of Florida. Sinkhole lakes that are round just like that, caused by slowly dissolving over time in this water.
Mike and I are going to clear out of this part of the swamp for a little bit and let you just have a few seconds just to enjoy the natural beauty and peace of this part of Big Cypress.
So here we are at another cypress tree, and this one has a lot of these cypress cones on them. You can see going all the way up the tree. See all those balls that are hanging from the ends of the branches? Those are all cypress cones, and it's those cones, although they don't look like cone-shaped, it's these cones that make this a coniferous tree. And because because cypress also sheds its needles in the fall, that makes it a deciduous tree. Just an interesting trait of cypress trees.
thank you for joining us into this short trail into a very large national preserve. We'll be heading back out into Big Cypress soon, and I'll be bringing more to you. Thanks for joining us today.